Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Got Mental Health podcast. I am your co-host, Rachel Kove. I'm the owner of Transformational Solutions, a life coaching business that specializes in addiction, trauma, and self-destructive behaviors. I'm an author, podcast host, group facilitator, speaker, and co-creator of the online 8-week self-development course, The Visions Program.
I'm your co-host, Arthur Mogilevsky, a business entrepreneur, dad, animal activist, and owner of AM Healthcare, California's leading dual diagnosis and mental health treatment centers, focusing on comprehensive and immersive treatment experiences with a network of facilities and dedicated professionals committed to providing each and every client the intimacy of care they so richly deserve.
This is the Got Mental Health podcast, a fun, open, and safe space where we talk to experts, thought leaders, and professionals in the mental health field.
Our goal is to educate, inspire, and empower people to take care of their mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being.
Join us weekly to hear Arthur talk like this as we talk all things mental health.
Follow us wherever you go to get your podcasts.
And don't forget to rate and review as it really supports our show.
Thanks, guys.
And keep listening to Arthur.
Welcome, everyone, to the Got Mental Health podcast. I'm Arthur Mogilevsky. I'm here with my co-host and partner in crime, Rachel Kove.
Kove.
Creator of Transformational Solutions, also creator of the Visions Program, a self-actualization 8-week course.
Yes.
Soccer player, entrepreneur, grandiose best mom in the world. Happy Mother's Day coming up.
Thank you.
And just one of the coolest, unique humans in my life, and and again, co-creator of Got Mental Health. So,
what an intro! Thanks, Arthur Mogilevsky.
Mogilevsky, Rachel.
Whatever.
So thanks for being on here today. Not like you had a choice.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so glad we get to do this together.
Today's interview is of Rachel.
Yes, it is.
And I'm really excited about it.
Are you? Because you look super excited.
I'm super nervous.
Are you?
Yo, extremely.
No, you're not.
No, I'm not.
You don't get nervous.
I try not to show it. But no, I'm really excited about it because, you and I have had, 3 years or so, coming on 4 years of interaction and conversations that have veered in millions of different directions, and they're always very interesting. And we're constantly saying, like, we need to put this on film, or we need to record this. This would have been a great recording. And we finally did it.
Yes, we did. We said yes.
Yes. High five.
Yes to opportunity.
High five to that.
We just fucking did it.
Yeah, we did.
That's it.
And I'm really excited about the direction that it's going. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be inspirational. But today's about you. And there's a lot of questions I'd love to ask because I love your philosophy. I love your train of thought. I love where you're headed. But I want to kind of start with just tell us a little bit about you and kind of your journey and what led you to the place you're in today.
Well, thank you, Arthur Mogilevsky. It's nice to be interviewed by you. It's nice to interact with you at Interactions.
Yes.
We have had fabulous conversations, and I'm glad that we just did this. I love what we talk about. I love who we get to talk to, and I'm excited what we're building on here. So thank you. I feel like I'm an ever-evolving spirit.
That's one way of putting it.
And just constant seeking of the truth within myself and in the world. And I've 15 years in recovery, which I think is where I could probably start from. I mean, I could say I started from being born 31 years ago.
What did that feel like?
It was a really tight squeeze out of my mother.
Vivian, we apologize.
Sorry, Mom, who also works at Interactions. Yeah. I think my journey did definitely start 15 years ago when my mom and dad sent me to residential treatment center for alcohol abuse because I was 100% going to die. And that was single-handedly the best thing that's ever happened to me because I really was going to die. And the last time I ever drank, I was 16 years old, and I think it was 2:00 in the morning. I invited a guy over from MySpace. Remember MySpace?
Wow.
I had never met him before, but he was some
His
guy.
name Tom?
No, that's funny. Like, what actually happened to MySpace? It's like funny.
Facebook.
I know, Facebook. That's true. I tried actually looking for my MySpace a long time ago. I could never actually find it.
Yeah.
But I was 16. I had a soccer game that I had to be at like 8:00 in the morning, not to play, but to go watch with my soccer coach. And I was an avid soccer player. I was working in scholarship programs to go to play eventually at like D1 schools. I traveled around the world playing soccer, and unfortunately my alcoholism got in the way of that. But at that night, I invited this guy over from MySpace, and I said, hey, if you bring me alcohol, then I'll pay for your cab ride over here. And this guy is like in his 20s, like hanging out with 16-year-olds.
You didn't know him?
No, never knew him. Didn't know
Nice.
if he would rate me. Didn't know. The thing about it is I didn't even think about those things. Like when I'm in my active addiction with alcoholism, I don't think about the value of my life. I don't think about who I'm hurting. I don't think about who I'm stealing from or the values that I'm going against. I don't think about the integrity I'm going to lose. I just think about escaping from my misery and pain. And so on that night, he came over and brought me like French liqueur.
Interesting choice.
Quite positive I was roofied. Can't confirm that, but I barely drank and I passed out. And I woke up at like 4:00 in the morning, went upstairs to get more alcohol, crawled downstairs and I knew I had to be at a soccer game. So I did a really genius thing and I went into the bathtub and I got into the bath completely and utterly intoxicated. I could barely move. And I passed out in bath with the water about to cover my face is when I woke up.
Wow.
And I crawled out of the bathtub. I literally was crawling because I could barely stand. And my mom walked in that morning, saw me in bed with this dude, and saw the wine glasses, and she just pulled me out of there as fast as she could. She took me to my godparents' house. This was after 2.5 years of this same pattern. And she tested me. She said I came up positive for opiates, which, again, I never took drugs that day or that week. And 2 weeks later, I went to rehab.
Wow.
And it started my journey into transformation and healing and recovery. And it's been single-handedly, again, like the best thing I ever did. I started a company, Transformational Solutions, with Seth Hall. I wanted to start a company where I could provide people with what I needed. And I needed mentorship, and I needed someone to guide me, and I needed a friend, and I needed someone who had been through what I had gone through to advise me on how to get through the next moment. And that was 5 years ago. 6 years ago? I think it was 6 years ago.
Wow. Mazel.
Thank you. And I feel like, Bruce Lee is one of my favorite mentors. And he talks about martial arts, that martial arts is just a form of self-expression. And that is how I want to live my life. Like before I die, I want to know that I was fully self-expressed. In every avenue. Like, I think there's this pressure in our culture that's like, find that one thing that you're good at and only do that one thing.
Right.
And I just, honestly, I know I've said this to you a million times, but you're one of those people that influenced me to not buy into that idea. So I act, I sing, I write, I work in mental health, I work in substance abuse. I have a couple podcasts. I have Kicking It with the Coves with my brother and my dad. I have this podcast. I have a couple other ones I'm working on. I've written a book. I have another one I'm writing. So I just say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting, right? Because you're also in that position right now where you're asking the question of when do I stop saying yes to everything, right? And how do I create that balance?
Yeah.
So where are you with that right now?
In this current moment, I'm learning how to focus on a few things at a time, and that just because I say no does not mean I'm saying no forever. It just means I'm focusing my time and attention on 2 or 3 projects.
Nice.
Holding space for the other ones, just not giving it all of my heart and attention to right now. And it's hard for me. It's really hard for me because
Talk about that. Why?
It's hard for me because I have this constant thing in I think, actually, well, if you really want to psychoanalyze it.
Let's do it.
When my stepdad died, 2 weeks before he died, and he was like another father to me, and to this day, my son is named after him. I mean, I have his ashes. He was one of the greatest teachers of my life. And 2 weeks before, 2 weeks before he died, I was on the staircase of the home that he shared with my mother. And he looked at me, and we just had such a deep connection. We had these really rich, meaningful conversations. And he just looked at me, and I was like the daughter he never had. And he said, I don't want to die. There's so much left I want to do. And 2 weeks later, he died. And I think that moment really influenced me. Right. I'm scared of dying without fully living and fully doing everything I want to do. So I've really had to learn how to take my time, and that there really is plenty of time. And I think there's probably a little bit of fear that there's not.
Because you don't know what can happen tomorrow, right? I mean, most people in the world have kind of been privy to that in the past couple of years, where, you know, you walk into a grocery store, you walk home, and you don't know if you're going to wake up the next morning because you might catch something, right? And so you're taking advantage of every moment, right? When you wake up in the morning, what motivates you to get up and go and take advantage of the things that are brought to you?
Life. The fact that I get to breathe. Because, again, I've lost a baby. I've had cancer. My stepdad died. I've watched plenty of people die. Not everyone got an opportunity to wake up today. So I think also the fact that when I was a teenager, I was suicidal. I didn't want to live. So for me, the fact that I love living, I just want to go live. And I just want to use whatever talents God gave me to use in this world. Because I don't believe the talents that we're born with are for us. I think they're for, in some way, to contribute to the flow and the stream of the world, to help people. So I don't want to waste my time. I really hate wasting my time here, because people don't realize that there are people that would love to be here that aren't. Right.
Yeah. And then given that opportunity, I mean, I've seen your calendar. It's quite colorful.
You can thank Audrey Sinclair for that, my assistant.
Thank you. Thanks for making time for this podcast.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I agree with you 100%. I think that people do at times take things for granted, and they regret it when it's too late. I mean, I'm kind of in a position, you know, we're all in these types of positions, but me personally in the position of that way where, you know, my grandparents are getting to a certain age, and I haven't spent as much time with them as I wanted to. And, you know, a couple of years ago, my grandmother passed away. It was a random thing. And she was like my mom. And so, you know, we take for granted things, and we kind of, unfortunately, come to realization when it's maybe a little too late sometimes. So it's amazing, and it's powerful that you're constantly consciously aware of that, and you're trying to take advantage of that.
Thank you.
In life. What brings you joy?
There's so many things that bring me joy, but true presence in the moment brings me joy.
Talk about that. What does that mean?
Well, children are in the present moment. They're our greatest teachers of what it means to be fully present. And there's a reason they're pretty much happy all the time, giggling and laughing and playing all the time, because they have full access to everything that's available in the present moment. They're connected to the colors. They're connected to the wind. They're connected to what they see and what they hear and what they touch and what they feel. Everything is so amazing.
They're not blinded by the things that adults are usually blinded by.
Yeah, which a lot of the time is trauma, honestly. I mean, trauma really steals people away from the present moment. It keeps you in your amygdala, which is this like constant guard that's trying to help you avoid danger. So it really takes you out of the present moment. So that's why I'm so passionate about helping people overcome their trauma and overcome their fear, which is really at the core of trauma. It's just fear, because fear really steals people from being in the present moment and really living.
Right. So, you know, question to that is, right now, obviously, mental health is a popular term, right? Treatment for mental health because of everything that we've been through. Traumatic experiences, events. Obviously, people go through a traumatic time in their life, and through that, they start processing it by doing drugs, alcohol, sex and love addiction, eating disorders. The list goes on and on and on, right? There's so many various forms of treatment for trauma. How do people figure out what's the right path that they need to go on? I mean, as a clinician yourself and as a coach and someone who's lived it but also is helping clients walk through it as well, what do you look for, and what kind of advice and what kind of plan can you create for the client to help process through that?
It's a great question. My experience was, and still to this day, is I have to experience everything before I know what the right decision is for myself. I wish I was the other way, where people can research, read a book, and then they can make their decision. I usually have to take a risk and experience it for myself. I think a short answer would be to know that this is long term. Like care is not,
it doesn't go away. It doesn't
go away. I'm 15
15
years into this, and I still have so much I'm working on, and I've overcome so much.
Right.
But I think it's just accepting, because it really hindered me that I thought that if I just do this, then, and I just do this, A plus B equals C, and I'm done. And that,
or take medication,
or just take medication. I've been on medication. I'm not against medication. It's not going to fix me.
Right.
It didn't fix me.
Right.
It was a bridge to get me to where I needed to go, to get off the couch. It helped me alleviate really obsessive thoughts at the time, and I was able to get more help, and I was able to actually really target the underlying pain that was driving all of these compulsive behaviors. But I think, to answer your question, it's approaching your healing in a holistic way, meaning it's not just approaching one area of your life. It's looking at your family system. It's looking at your physical health. It's looking at your emotions. It's looking at your childhood. It's looking at your relationships to your core beliefs. It's looking at what motivates you. It's looking at your romantic relationships. It's looking at your parent-child dynamics in your home growing up. It's looking at what influences you in your life today. It's looking at your relationship to the substances, why you're doing it. Gabor Mate says, it's not why the substance, it's why the pain. So that's really, for me, what the work is. It's why the pain. You understand the pain, and why you're trying to escape from it, you won't need to escape from it. Because if you understand why the pain, and you feel it, and you transcend it, and you transmute it, and you free it from your body no longer has to hold it anymore. And then you get to actually feel safe to be in your body. Right. Which children, unless there's trauma, they love being in their body. Yeah. All they want to do is express their body.
Constantly.
They have so much energy.
Thank God.
I really think that's what healing is. It's really getting back to our childlike states.
Yeah.
Being authentic and free and
that's
wild.
That's the ultimate experience, right?
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. That's hard to remember because we're blinded by the things that have happened in our own lives and constantly being thrown at us.
Blinded by the bullshit.
Speaking of, how do you use your creativity and your art to help you with your mental health and with your mental well-being?
What a great question. Again, I think that human beings, we are in constant, we are artists. We're all artists. So when people are like, oh, are you an artist? Every human being is an artist. It's just that you have to see how they're expressing their art. Are they expressing their art through acting? Are they expressing it through knitting? Are they expressing it through buying baseball cards? Are they expressing it through creating clothing? It doesn't have to be some big, famous thing that people are doing to be an artist. I mean, it is I teach clients this a lot. It's like we're either suppressing things, we're either depressed, repressing things, or we're expressing. And for me, expression is pressure exiting the body. So and I did make that up actually. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Nice. Get that double take.
Right. So imagine if you had all this pressure in your body and you can't go anywhere. What are you supposed to do?
Right. How do you let it out?
I mean, you either implode or you explode, and you take your explosion out on your kids or your spouses or people on the road or your employees or people you work with or colleagues or friends. And so it never goes anywhere. It just gets displaced onto other people, but it doesn't actually get to be transcended and leave the body. So for me, expression is the best thing you can really do for your mental health.
Right.
Is to express yourself, to get honest, to if that's expressing yourself through talking, if that's expressing yourself through drawing, writing. I mean, Bethany Dwyer, who's one of my dearest friends, like she works here at Interactions, laughing is one of the most healing things anyone could ever do for their mental health. And that's all her. I'm not quoting.
Yeah.
Like that's all
yeah.
Bethany. And because like she says, again, this is Bethany Dwyer, not Rachel Kove, there's nothing like laughter to bring you into the present moment. And when she said that to me, I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
That is so true. Like when you're laughing,
forget about everything else.
You forget about everything.
Everything else. Absolutely. I think that's one of the, like, for me at least, the joys of playing with my daughter and having fun and being silly and stupid is that you just, my mind can be in like so many different directions, but when I'm in the moment and having fun and dressing up and screaming and throwing and wrestling and all these things, forget about it all. And like, you just stop worrying about shit that doesn't really matter, right? And so I anyways, kind of going back to it, but
well, I think you're in the flow,
right?
You're in the flow of life when you're in the present moment. And when you're in the flow, you're limitless, you're abundant, you're whole.
Yeah. Talk to me about transformational solutions. What was the inspiration behind that? You said obviously you co-created it with Seth Hall. You utilize it within your own practice when you run groups, individual stuff. Talk to me about that process. What did it look like designing it? What did it look like creating it, writing a book about it, creating a children's book about it? Like so many cool things. Tell me about it.
Well, I'll tell you the backstory.
Let's do it.
Which I think I shared with you in your episode. I think I did. So if you're hearing the story again, I'm sorry. But
flashback.
I was working for another company and I was going through pregnancy discrimination.
Right.
And I was pregnant. I didn't have a job. I was shocked. It's not that I was making much money at the time, but it was something. Seth had proposed to me on a Friday. 3 days later, I found out I was pregnant. Oh. A lot of people think it's the other way around.
Oh, that's interesting.
I know.
Did he know before you?
No.
Can you imagine?
No, I wasn't showing. It was like totally, crazy. I mean, that's just my life though. And so I didn't have a job. He was making, I think, 13 hours at the time working at a treatment center. And I was scared. I don't live in fear though. I have thoughts that are fear-driven thoughts, but I don't live in fear. I really live in solution, and I live in a constant state of trusting God, my higher power, universe, whatever you want to call it. Just trusting that time will eventually show me the next right thing, and time will eventually show me what I have to do. All I can control right now is my attitude, my behavior, and what I do next. That's all I can control. And so I just put one foot in front of the other, and I let the universe handle the results. And we were dog sitting at a friend's house in Beverly Hills, and we were reading at the time her dad wrote this book, and she told me I could talk about it. Her dad's Gene Simmons, and we were watching their house, and because they never liked to like name drop or anything, but they told me one time I could talk about it. So you're going to scratch that. You're going to scratch the whole part, JP. So I was watching their house, and Gene wrote a book, and it was a really inspiring book to me. And it was his whole journey of how he created KISS and how he came from nothing and didn't grow up with a father, didn't have any background in business. And he had this idea and he ran with it. And I just remember looking at Seth and saying, you need to read this book. And at that time we had this idea of creating, it was at-home treatment because there was a really successful company on the East Coast that was doing that. And they had really good results. And ultimately we wanted to provide long-term care for people because after doing this for 13 years, you're not going to get fixed in 30 to 60 days. You're not
Sure.
going to get fixed in 60 days to 6 months. Yes, you're going to get a lot of treatment and care, absolutely, but it's long term. And I think that's really unfortunate in this industry is that people think like, okay, you leave treatment, you're fixed, or you go to outpatient, you're fixed, and it's not the case. So I think we wanted to provide something long term, like an aftercare type program, and coaching was what I was really good at. And I was working for this other company. I had a lot of great results, and I just really loved connecting with people, inspiring people, motivating people. And so we came up with our company. And it took 6 months to get a client. I was scared shitless.
Wow.
And again, just complete and utter trust and faith.
Right.
And then there was an outpatient facility, a therapist I'd worked with a long time ago said, hey, do you want to run groups here? And of course, on the inside, I'm dying. And I'm like, I have no technical experience. And she's like, you're going to be amazing. And so I just said, yes, absolutely. And at that moment, I just said yes. And she was the person that kind of was the catalyst to introducing us into the world as transformational solutions. And then I saw a need for a workbook. So I created the Mountain Method workbook with Seth that we wrote together.
Where can people buy it?
On Amazon.
Nice.
Thanks, Arthur. Unfortunately, no one really buys workbooks. So
Sure.
no one wants to do workbooks because everyone wants to do an app or
Well, they just want to be given the solution.
they just want to be given the solutions. But
yeah.
the Mountain Method workbook is a workbook that we have used so many times in groups and have had incredible success because really it's just all the emotional life skills you need in order to tackle all your goals. And they're
just helping you organize it all.
Helping you organize it all, but like it's meant to be like, oh, okay, so if I'm on my journey and I just got rejected from someone and now I'm experiencing disappointment, how do I get through disappointment? Go to the chapter on disappointment. If I'm really super depressed and I don't have any motivation and I don't feel like I have any purpose in my life, go to the chapter on motivation. Read a quick excerpt, and answer 5 questions and you'll get motivated and you'll know how to work through disappointment and you'll know how to deal with your emotions.
And this is tested. This is something that
we've been using it for years.
That's amazing. Like who wouldn't want to buy that?
I don't know. Well, my plan is to turn it into an audiobook, but it's also part of something else that we're working on. But
it's amazing.
Thank you. So I feel like there was this book someone told me about it years ago where it was like, if you have an idea, and this is just a theory, but if you believe in God, if you believe in energy, we're all energy. We're just energy beings, right? You put us under a microscope.
Right.
We're energy.
Energy.
We're just energy.
Yeah.
Where do ideas come from? So if you have this belief, and I do, that it's not my idea. It's an idea that's coming from a very high vibration.
It's the universe's idea.
It's the universe's idea that's coming into your brain to express itself. And either you get a hold of it or it's going to go to someone else.
Right. That's usually where ideas come from, someone else.
Yeah. Someone else? That's really funny. And hopefully not. Like, hopefully you're real and you're actually creating your own
ideas. None of your ideas are yours.
God damn it. But yeah, so and like you've taught me and you've been a really great reminder of this for me. Like you never know what's going to stick. You never know what's going to like make you money. You never know what's going to be the thing that makes you successful. So you just have to just do it.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I think define your own success.
Yeah, I think we talked about it on my podcast. I think success is measured differently between everybody. How do you measure success?
It's a great question. I honestly feel like I change my definition of success every single day.
Sure.
I remember when I had when I started Transformational Solutions, which at the time was Home Care Recovery Solutions, I honestly think we had less than $100 in our account. And then the goal was to make a certain amount, and we made that certain amount. And then the goal was to make another amount, and then we made that amount. And then it was like, okay, so
we can do it.
We can do it. And it gave me the confidence to be able to do whatever it is that I want to do. I think what for me success is my ability to be in the present moment today and to have true connection with people. And am I fully expressing myself? Am I living in fear, or am I staying stuck? Am I not doing what I want to do based out of fear? For me, like my successes really come from the small little things I do. Like I made a phone call to someone the other day in this industry that I was really scared to make a phone call to, because for whatever reason, like I can go speak in front of hundreds of people, sing in front of people, act in front of people, but fucking making a phone call is so scary. And when I made that phone call, I was on the way to do Kicking It with the Coves, the other podcast I have. And I made that phone call and I just said, fuck it. Just do it. And I made the call. And after I made the call, I got all giddy and I was like, oh my God, I really did it. That felt like success to me. Success for me.
But what did I teach you?
What did you teach me? Oh, never to get too excited?
Exactly.
It's very true. Never to get too excited. But for me, the excitement came from I overcame a fear. It wasn't contingent upon a result happening.
Right.
It was contingent upon I took action towards something that I was really afraid to do that was keeping me stuck. And every time I take action towards something I'm afraid to do, I feel more free to be myself. I feel less bound. I feel less chained. I feel less controlled by fear.
Right. And you feel less fearful the next time you have to do it again.
100%.
Yeah.
And I know that about myself. I know that once I do something I'm afraid to do and I do it 1 or 2 times, watch out.
Right.
Because then I just become motivated to prove that fear wrong.
Yeah, you're very storm-like.
Am I?
Yeah, in a good way.
In a good way.
No, honestly, you'll have some sunshine afterwards, but in the end of the day, if you have a thought or a belief or an idea, you are a powerhouse in that sense. So it's a compliment.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So obviously, with everything going on as well, you also grace interactions with group facilitation and whatnot. You're known as the cry maker. Walk me through that. Why cry maker? You make people cry. And you're proud of it. And you talk me through that.
Okay. I'm not making them cry.
Good point.
I'm asking questions and I'm listening to them. And I think for some of the people that I work with that are in my groups, they're being listened to for the first time. And you ask me, we were talking about being present earlier. For me, being present with someone is being attuned to them, to their thoughts, their emotions, their body language. It's true connection and intimacy. And so for a lot of these clients that are coming in, most people in the world, they have no relationship to intimacy. They lost that type of intimacy with their parents. They never felt heard. They never felt seen. And in this world, like our parents and people at school and just anyone in the world are trying to change who we are. And so when someone comes into my group, I'm just there with them. I'm just with them. And there's this really incredible doctor that I had on, again, with Kicking It with the Coves. His name is Dr. Mark Goulston. And he talks about surgical empathy, that he coined that. That's his term, surgical empathy. And it's you're going into, in a sense, their pain with them so they don't feel alone. And I think sometimes I can be very maternal, and I get that from my mother. I also just love them. And I was them and I am them. And I don't feel any sense of difference with them. I when they cry, I don't look. I think recently you walked into me meditating and I had tears in my eyes. And I don't look at tears as a bad thing. I look at it as a release. I look at it as energy leaving the body. And the more that leaves the body, the more room there is for authenticity and the more room there is for people to just be who they are and not be who everyone else thinks they need them to be in order for them to feel okay or a sense of approval. So anytime someone's crying in my group, I look at it as, oh my God, they're releasing.
Right.
They get to feel seen and loved and heard in this moment. And the other thing too is I feel honored that they feel safe enough with me to let that part of them be exposed, because so many of these people have been so shamed in their emotions, especially men. I was leading a group the other day and there was 8 men in the group. I love leading men's groups because in our society, men have this pressure to never be vulnerable, never show their emotions. And every single one of them, I asked them this question. I said, why do you avoid expressing yourself? And every single one of them said, because I'm afraid of being vulnerable. I'm afraid of being perceived as weak. I'm afraid of being called a little bitch. I'm afraid of being called a pussy.
Jesus.
And it's sad.
Yeah, it's super sad.
And so again, but enough of that. This is how people kill themselves. This is how people wind up in addictions. This is how people isolate, hate themselves. They can't connect with people because they're not allowed to be themselves.
Right.
So if they come into my group, I just get to hold space.
Yeah. Give them the room to do that. Well, and I think one of the things that also makes you a great, coach and facilitator is first of all, you're not ashamed of where you came from, and you've accepted your past and who you are and where you are now, and you're open about it, and you're not closed. And I think that when people see that, they see truth and honesty, and it's not just somebody sitting on a chair just reading off a booklet or or a pamphlet or whatever and handouts and whatnot. There's real connection. There's real authenticity. And like you said, something that they might not have gotten.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that and seeing that. I think that for me, an addict is riddled with shame. Shame is I'm bad. Guilt is I've done something bad. So shame hides in the shadows. I don't remember. I did not create that, but I get through things in life when I know that the person I'm talking to went through that and this is how they did it. I feel understood. And it doesn't mean that you have to be a heroin addict to understand heroin addict, to relate to a heroin addict. I never did heroin. I relate to the pain. I really don't think it's that complicated. I think whether you're acting out with sex, drugs, alcohol, food, sugar, gambling, technology addiction, underneath it's just all pain, and you're just trying to alleviate the pain. So I can relate to that. I can find myself in that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right now, you have so many things that's going on, and I think we can both agree and that probably the most important piece of your life is your role as a mother.
You're going there, huh?
I'm going there.
You're going there.
I'm gonna go there.
Oh boy.
Listen, it's really important for people to hear this, and because you are a single mom, and I with providing the space and being there for your son, and having all of these goals and ambitions, and also having the space for the clientele and having the space for family and this, and tell me and tell the audience that might be in the same position. They might be afraid. They might be, doubtful that they can do it. Right. I mean, I can't tell you, we just had Kenny Finnegan in here saying, what was it, 89% of men by the age of 5 will walk out on their families. It's like some crazy number. So it's out there. It's a lot. It's apparent, right? How do you balance all of that?
It's a really good question. And it's a vulnerable thing to talk about because my child is the most important thing in the world to me. And I do not want my son to grow up in trauma. I mean, everyone has trauma. Every kid, you can't escape trauma. Like, shit's going to happen in your childhood.
Some of that one asshole kid in high school that's going to throw his ice cream at you.
Yeah, there's going to be... I guess what I mean by that is I want to be that safe person at any moment for my child. And in order for me to be that emotionally and physically safe person for my son, I have to stay mentally and emotionally well. Because if I'm not emotionally and mentally well, I'm not available to him. I'm not safe. I can judge him. I can try and control him. I can be rude. I could be mean. I could yell at him. I don't want to do those things. So for me, being that safe role model for him is my mission in life. And it's my mission to show other parents how to do that for their children. And it doesn't come from having a great job and having money. Those are all really nice things. I love money, and money can provide incredible opportunities and experiences which are needed for children, right? But I want my son to know that no matter who he is, no matter what he does, no matter how he feels, my love is never going to be taken from him. And I do not want anything that influenced me to be projected onto him. I think what I love teaching families and people is just that our own internal projections become an outward external manifestation. So if I am not clear on what lens I'm seeing through, then I'm just going to project all of my shit onto my son. And I don't want to do that. And so balance, I have to have it. It's not like maybe I can have it. It's I have to have it. So then now that I know I have to have it, how do I create it? I'm this powerful being. You're this powerful being. And if I come in with this idea that we're extremely abundant and I can create anything that my mind says I can create, well, then how do I create balance? I have to sit down. I have to, there got to a point where I was so busy that I was in the bath and I was exhausted. And I was like, okay, what do I have to do next? Because now I'm getting to the point where I don't have as much patience with my kid. And I yelled at him and I felt so horrible. And I like cursed at him. And in that moment, I decided I'm never going to do that again. So what do I have to fix? There's something going on in me. It's not my son. It's never going to be my son. Kids can be really tough. And as the parent, it's your responsibility to be able to hold space for that, not to change them or fix them. But okay, that children are exhausting. Like if I know I have a little boy, I'm a single mom. I didn't intend to be a single mom, but this is my reality now. So if I want to show up as the best mom I can be and I have to accept that it's exhausting, now what?
Right.
I need to make sure that I'm getting enough sleep. I need to make sure that I am eating well. So what did I do with that? I fucking hate cooking. So I'm not going to cook. I'm not going to do it. And it also creates a lot of anxiety for me. So I have a meal delivery service and actually end up spending less on meal delivery services than on like making groceries. I meditate every day. That's a lie. I try to meditate every day. I definitely every day hold space for just me and to sit with me. I'm pretty good about meditating every day. I'm pretty solid in my journal writing every day. I see a therapist weekly. I'm constantly hiring coaches. I'm constantly reflecting on myself. Exercise is huge in my life. Huge. And then I really believe in having solid connections. I'm not into that whole work 24/7, you're going to be successful. Like I have to make time for my connections. Connection is one of my biggest values. So I make time for my connections. And listen, I'm a big crier. Like when I'm stressed, I cry. I let it out. I tell people I'm having a really hard time. I show up for my needs. When I'm having a hard time, I say it. I text someone. I say, hey, I'm having a really hard time. I need you to just come sit with me. As a mother and in our society, for whatever reason, somehow we've been disorganized in this way of viewing parenthood. We used to be tribal beings, and now for whatever reason, we have to do everything on our own. And as mothers, and I don't know if I'm not a dad, so I can only speak for mothers, but I imagine dads go through something similar where it's like this pressure to have your shit together all the time.
Right.
This pressure to be perfect with everything all the time. The pressure to not need people, to do everything on your own, to be completely self-sufficient and independent. And I just don't buy into that. I need people. I need help. I raised Jackson with a tribe of people. Some people don't have grandparents. I didn't have grandparents, but my parents had best friends around me all the time. I cannot raise my child by myself. I can't give him everything that he needs. He needs different types of energy around him, teaching him different things that I can't teach him. So long story short.
Yeah. No, such amazing, valuable information, honestly. I mean,
Thank
it's
you.
truthful, right? It's not like, here's a self-help steps 1 through 10 on how to be a single entrepreneur mom.
Yeah. Well, I did this article one time, I don't know, for some magazine, and they called it Life is Messy, Deal with It. Or it was like, life is messy, now what? So I think it's embracing the messiness, letting go of this perfect way of looking, this perfect way of talking, this perfect way of behaving, this perfect way of parenting. You're gonna mess up as a parent. Stop trying to be perfect. But Gabor Mate talks about this all the time too. It's not always about the trauma that happens to you. it's also about what happens after that trauma. So let's say your dad yells at you or your mom yells at you. What happened after that? Did the parent take ownership of that?
Right.
Did the parent teach the kid, hey, I'm your mom. I made a mistake. I'm looking you in the eye and I'm telling you that I yelled at you and that's not okay.
It's so important for parents to have humility and to admit being wrong.
Yes.
And there's, there's this thing, it's because older cultures are like, you can never be wrong in front of your kids. You always have to be right. You always have to be strong. You can't ever be weak because they depend on you for survival. It's like, yeah, but their survival is also based off of your honesty to them, right? And your transparency.
Damn.
And
that was good.
Right. And so I have no problem telling my daughter, I'm sorry and I was wrong in what I did or said, and I'll try not to do it again.
I love that you said I'll try not to do it again.
Well, because I don't want to promise something that because then they'll hold it against you later on if you mess up, because humans make errors and you mess up.
But what you're teaching your daughter is, oh, my dad is not perfect. My dad can make mistakes, so I don't have to be perfect. I can make mistakes. So many clients I've worked with said their parents never apologized to them. They never saw their dad or their mom cry. Their parents never said, I'm sorry. So you get to alleviate your daughter from this pressure of having to be perfect all the time.
Yeah.
You get to teach her to own her mistakes.
Absolutely. I think one of the things, like growing up for me, at least, I grew up in a somewhat strict household. I mean, obviously Russian parents, and I was a trouble-making child, and so my dad had to discipline me in his ways and whatnot. But I do remember him coming back and saying, like, I hate doing this. I don't get any pleasure in having this relationship with you, and apologizing at times, in his way. And so I think that helped in our relationship and our growth as friends and whatnot. So I think that's being honest and being truthful with, regardless of how old your child is, because they understand. Even at 2 or 3 years old or 4 years old, they feel it. Their filter. They have no filter. They see the truth immediately, and I think that's huge.
Yeah, and also, how do I say this? I think there's an art with discipline. Rather than disciplining a child, I think there's something more about teaching them the value of discipline and teaching. Yes, rather than discipline being this experience that causes fear in a child, teaching them the value of discipline. Through discipline, you get to have this, buddy. Through discipline, you get to have structure and routine. Through discipline, you get to build confidence in playing soccer. Through discipline and making your bed every day, you get to know and feel accomplished that you made your bed every day. And you get to become the bigger boy that you want to become. I think there's this like old way of parenting where I hear it all the time. You have to discipline your kid. I don't really know what that means. Like, what do you think that means?
You have to discipline your kid. Well, I feel like a lot of it is based off of what society expects from you, and the parents' own shame. Also kind of the way that they were raised. I think it's this constant fear of what are people going to think of us if you're like that. And so, like, I don't want you to be like that. Or, again, the parents' own anxiety, and they don't know how to cope with it, so they take it out on the kid. And I'm not a big proponent for disciplining at all.
Well, what does that mean?
I don't. Well,
in your eyes,
right? Well, I mean, my eyes, it's a harsh. It's a form of a punishment, right? And so, at least for me, and discipline doesn't necessarily need to be punishment. For me, that's the way that I saw it. I don't like that word. I'd probably want to be more of a welcoming and more of an educational and teaching. How can I make this a teachable moment?
Yes.
Right? And how can I actually explain to you, if you're not doing something right, why you're not doing it right, and have a conversation. And like, it's this constant thing where parents are like, I'm not going to have a conversation with my child. They're 5 years old. Like what that it's like like why would you not have a conversation with your child? Because that adds up. It adds up and it adds up and it adds up, and by the time they're 13 years old, they're not having conversations with you either. They're shutting their door, they're yelling at you, they're going out and doing drugs and alcohol and partying, and they're doing everything to rebel against everything you've tried to control for them for so long. And like, so for me, it's all about being honest with your child and sitting down and having conversations and explaining why you're doing what you're doing. Just explaining to them, because my wife is phenomenal in this, and she can explain to our daughter why is it that we do the things that we do, why people die, why people this, why you don't do this, why you do this, all of these things. I mean, we're a family of a vegan family, and it's like explaining the rights and wrongs about animal cruelty and like having those honest and open conversations at like starting at the age of 3.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so their brains are brilliant. My daughter can speak 3 languages. You don't think she'll understand?
Is it 3?
Well, she speaks Russian and English, and she understands Hebrew.
Wow. They're brilliant.
And it's like, so you don't think that she can pick up on like why you shouldn't do certain things? And
well, here's the thing. They're always picking up on things.
Right.
Do you want to have any control on what they're picking up on?
Right. I don't think it's about control. I think it's about growth with them, right?
Growth with them.
You know what I mean? So I'm not trying to control the narrative. I'm trying to kind of educate and caress as she's progressing and seeing things or watching a YouTube video or like these types of things, right?
Yeah, I mean, but I think for me, I guess explaining for me does have a little bit of control in it for me, because if I don't explain to my son, if I yell at my son and I don't explain to him why, and I don't take control of that moment to explain it to him, he will be left with thinking he did something bad.
He did something wrong. Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So that's why I take control of that moment, I think.
Yes.
And explain, because at the end of the day, children live in an I, me world. They're naturally narcissistic at that age. So the whole world is about them. And
what did I do wrong?
What did I do wrong? So that's why the whole thing of like, don't take things personally. That's why most adults never got out of the toddler age, where the age is narcissistic.
Right.
And so, because a lot of the times that's when it's the most difficult time to raise a child. Their emotions are huge. They're explosive. They're impulsive. Everything is about them and what they want. And unfortunately, it's where a lot of people get trapped. But I think to move them in a healthy way and help them develop from that age, it is about explaining things. It's about teaching them boundaries. When they do something quote unquote wrong, instead of shaming them and my son shouldn't do that and my daughter shouldn't do that. Oh, Sally or Alice, she did that and she shouldn't do that because she should know that that's her grandma and she should respect her grandma. Why should she know that?
Yeah.
Why should she know that? And instead of explain that, like for example, and again, this is just for me. I don't force my kid to hug anybody. There's a lot of parents that will force their kids to hug grandparents, and I'm not shaming them at all. And at the same time, it's like, well, why should they have to hug anyone they don't want to hug? Or take a kiss from someone they don't want to take a kiss from?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I don't know where I went with that, but it's kind of just this idea of like, I get to explain to them what things mean, because if I leave it to them to do it, they'll create their own narrative. That narrative will stay with them until their adult life. If I teach my kid, if you don't want to hug that person, trust your body, build that boundary for yourself. You have body boundaries. By the time you're 15 and there's a predator around you, or there's a man or a woman that you're scared of around you, you can trust that because mommy and daddy didn't force you to hug anyone you don't want to hug. And you get to trust and run in the opposite direction, or go tell a safe person.
That's so funny. I mean, I'm saying it's funny because my wife is exactly like that. If our daughter does not want, like, it's like, that's fine. You don't need to.
I
And
love that.
And she protects it. It's just a funny situation. And I'll leave it like one of the greatest advices that my wife gave me to use with my daughter every time. Because my daughter would come up to me and she's like, "Daddy, are you proud of me?" And she told me, you got to flip it. It says, honey, are you proud of yourself? And I try to use that all the time.
Anna said that?
Yeah, she told me to start using it.
so
She read that in a book
good.
somewhere. And it's like one of the most powerful things you could do for a kid, because it builds up their own self-esteem, and they don't feel like they need to do everything for you. They do it for themselves.
Right.
You know,
they get to approve of themselves rather than getting the approval from you.
Exactly.
That is so good.
Yeah, powerful stuff. I do have a final question for you.
I feel like I know what it is.
I hope
I wonder
so.
why. Do you
I
do a
hope
podcast?
so. I think that
I wonder
there's
if
Got Mental Health. Have you heard of it?
I have heard of it.
So knowing what you know now,
Yes.
live through everything you've lived through. If you can go back 15 years, 20 years, whatever, however many years you want to go back, what advice, what suggestions would you give yourself?
I would tell myself, tell someone you're not okay.
Wow, that's powerful.
Just open your mouth and tell someone that you're suffering. Because I was that, again, I was just interviewed for another podcast at Beverly Hills High School where I went to school, and the woman who interviewed me or had me on her show, she said to me, I would have never guessed that you were having such a hard time in high school because you were the nicest girl.
Wow.
And you always had a smile on your face, and you always had such a big personality, and I was dying on the inside.
Wow.
But again, I felt this pressure to make sure to look good and to smile all the time. So I think for me it was to, one, tell someone you're not okay and stop trying to be like everyone else. That it's okay to be different. It's okay to be unique. It's okay to be loud. I would give myself permission to be myself, and that it's okay to just not be okay every moment of the day.
Yeah.
And I will also say to tell myself that this too shall pass. I always felt things were going to last forever, like the pain was going to last forever.
Time heals all.
It really does.
Well, thank you so much for being here, because you didn't have really a choice.
I did have a choice.
And everybody, again, Rachel Kove, my partner in crime on Got Mental Health. Please check out the book on Amazon, Transformational Solutions, and the Visions Program.
The book is The Mountain Method. The
Mountain
company
Method.
is Transformational Solutions,
Right.
and the 8-week course that we created, which is a self-actualization program. It's also on our website, transformationalsolutions.com.
Wonderful. And the Kicking It With the Coves podcast.
Yes, the Kicking It With the Coves podcast that I do with my dad and my brother. You can go and you can find that anywhere. Apple, Spotify, Podcast One. It's a really, really fun podcast.
And in regards to Got Mental Health, please continue to follow us, share, comments, suggestions. If you want to be on the show, please reach out to us. And you can find the podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.